How you feeling so far? You want to hear a final story? Okay, good, because I was going to tell it anyway. No kid ever grows up wanting to be an immigrant or a refugee. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer, a teacher, or a journalist. So even now, I pay close attention when I see any of these three professionals at work. A couple of months ago, I spent weeks watching the news, but not because of my childhood dream of becoming a reporter, no. I was watching the news because I was watching the reports about the situation at the Mexican-USA border and the inhumane way that the current administration was treating immigrant children. Immigrant children, some of them babies, as they were being ripped away from their parents' arms. Thanks to the effort of many organizations that organized thousands of people to march on the streets to the chants of families belong together, and thanks to the outrage of millions of concerned citizens, the situation at the border evolved in such a way that some of those families, only some of them, were being reunited. So I'm watching the news, and I'm watching a video clip of one of these reunions. I'm watching as the mother sees across the room the image of her little son, whom she has not seen in weeks. The mother runs across the room, gets down on her knees, and she hugs her son. And she hugs her son in such a way as if to make sure that no one will ever separate them again. Te amo, lo siento mucho, I love you, I'm so sorry, she says. But her son doesn't reply. Her son doesn't even look at her. And he doesn't hug her back. And I wonder, maybe he's too traumatized? Or maybe, just maybe, he blamed his mother for everything that happened to him so far. And I think this way because for many, many years, that's the way that I felt about my own mother. I was about 10 years old living in Guatemala, and my mother used to send me to the market to buy fabric for her sewing business. She couldn't afford to send my father because my father had a drinking problem, so he would drink the money away. But in this occasion, my mother came with me, and I was happy telling my mother everything that I had done before when I had come to the market on my own. And I was so happy that I wasn't paying attention as I carried the two bags under my arms. Suddenly, somebody took the bags from my arms. They were still in the bags, and I saw the thief running deep into the market. So I turned around and I started to run after the thief. Suddenly I heard my mother, "Stop!" I stopped running and the thief got away. A couple of months later, my mother emigrated to the USA, leaving me and my siblings in the care of our grandparents. It wasn't until 5 years later that she was able to send for us, and we came to this country undocumented. And at first, I was so happy to be reunited with my mother. But soon enough, like many other immigrants, I had to face the hardships of having to live in a country that was strange, alien to me. I started to feel angry at my mother for having separated me from everything and everyone I knew until then. So I started to feel resentment against my mother. I started to go to school, and I told my mother as I was going to school that I was going to study really hard so I could get a scholarship and I could become a teacher, a lawyer, or a journalist. You know that you're undocumented, my mother said. And you cannot get a scholarship because this was way before DACA. We didn't even knew anything that was going to come out as DACA. You know you're not going to get a scholarship, I told my mother say. So again, I blame my mother for having taken me away from the opportunity to get an education in Guatemala. So after high school, after I graduated, since I couldn't go to college, I told my mother that I was going to marry my high school sweetheart. You know that you can not supposed to get married because that's gonna complicate your immigration status, my mother said. But at this time, I was so upset at my mother that I didn't listen to her and I married my high school sweetheart. Also, she was kind of pregnant too, so we kind of had to get married. And after getting married, I had to find a job to provide for my family. And soon enough, I realized that finding a good paying job with no working permit was going to be difficult. So I ended up working at a Taco Bell. One night, I was working at a Taco Bell, and some kids were making a lot of noise in the dining room. So I approached the kids because at this time I had already become a manager, and I asked the kids to be quiet. Now, I don't know if the kids were drunk, high, or just acting stupid. But as I approached the kids, one of them reached over the counter and just punched me in the face. A few minutes later, I found myself jumping over the counter, running after the kid. After the kid that had punched me, I had a knife in my hand. The kid stood by the door taunting me, and I knew that if the kid and I got into a fight, I was going to use the knife, and one of us was going to get hurt. But at the last minute, his friends pulled him away. So I went back into the restaurant, and I found myself upset, really upset. But not only at the kid that had punched me, but also upset at my mother for having taken me away from the opportunity to get an education in Guatemala, for having taken me away from everything I knew, and for bringing me to this country undocumented. I blame her for everything, and I wonder if I had not been better off just staying in Guatemala. Now, while I have been busy building resentment against my mother has been working 2-3 jobs to save enough money for our immigration application and our immigration fines so she could pay for all of them. In one occasion, when my application for citizenship or for a green card got denied because I had gotten married, my mother called me to the house and she gave me another form that I was supposed to fill up so I could apply again. But I was so upset that I took the application, I ripped it apart, and I threw it in the garbage. I don't need these papers, I told my mother as I stomped away from her house angrily. My mother, after I left, she went into the garbage can, fished up the application, tape it together, fill it up, and send it to immigration. And she paid the immigration fine. I would have never gotten a green card if it wasn't because of my mother. But it wasn't until March of last year, after more than 30 years that I came to this country, that I finally became a USA citizen. You can applaud for that. So the day that I became a USA citizen, the first thing that I did was to go see my mother to give her the good news. And I also wanted to ask her a question that's been bugging me for all this time. Mom, I asked her, when was the time that you decided that we had to leave Guatemala and come to this country undocumented? Remember the day at the market, my mother replied, when I told you to stop running after the thief? You know why I asked you to stop running? Because you thought that I couldn't catch him? I told my mother, no, because I knew that you could catch him. And I knew that he probably had some friends that were going to help him, and they were going to hurt you or even kill you, my mother said. That day, I knew that it wasn't safe for you guys or for us to be in Guatemala anymore. I knew exactly what my mother meant. Because back then, Guatemala was in the middle of a bloody civil war. A lot of people were getting killed on both sides of the war. There was a lot of violence. There was no jobs. If we had stayed in Guatemala, even if I had gotten an education, any of those educations that I wanted to have, any of those professions would have gotten me in trouble with the Guatemalan government, because teachers were being taken away by the army because the army was blaming them that they were trying to convert the population into communists. Lawyers and newspapers, reporters that were trying to educate the population about the laws and the things that the government was doing against them were also being put in jail or threatened with violence. So at the moment, I hugged my mom, and I apologized for all those years that I had been building resentment against her. That was a couple of months ago. But a little while ago, as I was watching the videos of the mother being reunited with her son, I couldn't help but wonder about my own immigration experience. And I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if we had, in fact, stayed in Guatemala, and then I had tried to cross the border with my own kids as I grew older, only to have them separated from my arms by immigration. Or what if we hadn't made it to the country, we had been separated and put into cages? And I'm thinking about all of that as I'm watching the video clip of the mother being reunited with her son. And as I watch, I see that the kid is no longer looking away. The kid is looking at his mother, and his little tiny arms are moving to embrace her. This young, beautiful, brave kid has learned in a couple of minutes what took me years to understand, that it was not his mother's fault that they had to come to this country undocumented. His mother is only trying to provide him with a chance at life, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. So as they hug, they cry. And as they cry, I cry. I cry tears of anger. But this is no longer the misguided anger of my youth. No. This is anger with a purpose to march, to fight, and to let people know that children do not belong in cages, and the families belong together. Thank you. Can you keep your applause going for all our storytellers, please? Thank you so much to each of you for making this show a reality. This is so amazing. Like, thank you so much. Please feel free to come and talk to the storytellers, take the pictures, ask them for the bios or their website. Thank you so much.